This is Jenny.
And I'm Jess.
And this is a walk in the woods at midnight where we love to watch scary movies and then talk about them. And basically, we really try to find movies that are accessible to everyone in our own homes. And we watch platforms like Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime. So these films should be readily available. They're not new releases, and they're just really fun. So this week we watched
The Canal.
The Canal. That's right. It is an Irish film, and it was done by Ivan Kavanagh, who also did I think just one other film, and it was like in 2008, and it was called The Can Man, which I have not seen, but he made it for about 1,000 euro. So I don't know.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. So it was very very interesting. He has no background in film school, nothing. He said he would rather spend the money on making a film than going to film school. So he has a big background in films and loving films, and his father and I guess uncle were huge film buffs. So he learned a lot from them. So The Canal is I believe, his second film. First one was a horror movie. This one also is. This is definitely a psychological horror movie. It is basically, I would almost call it like sort of a fever dream-ish kind of feeling. So the plot is basically husband and wife. Movie opens with this young couple, husband and wife, two main characters. The wife is pregnant. They move into a new house. Don't ever move. Just don't move. It's always a bad idea. There's always going to be something that happens. So they move into this new house, and then it kind of flashes forward 5 years later, which is an interesting.
She goes from caterpillar to like gorgeous butterfly in that 5 years.
Yeah.
She was like frumpy painter pants, pregnant woman.
Well, we have to give her a break. She was pregnant, and I think she was still really lovely. No?
Well, she was
a little girlish, I think.
She was very pretty, but boy, they dramatically dressed her up when they went to that party. She was like a supermodel when they went to that party, and he was like Johnny Frumpenheimer at that party. She was leagues above him at that party. They made sure to
show that big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were clearly not in the same league anymore.
Yes. So, yes, 5 years later, they have this son. She's far more successful than he is, which is always, this sort of deep-seated kind of threat to masculinity. At least, I mean, certainly not everyone has that sense, but there are, that's kind of this archetype, I think, at least in like the Western world, probably Eastern world too. But anyway, so yes, they go to a party, and it's very clear that something's kind of up, and he sort of senses it with this kind of sixth sense that she's sort of drifting from him, and that maybe there's something going on. So that is that's taking place. And then also at that same time, his day job, he is an archivist. And he reviews and preserves and categorizes film. So the woman who's his boss hands him this archival footage one day, and it is called something like Murder 1902 or something. And what he realizes as he's watching it, that there was this horrible murder that was committed in his house. and it was a man who brutally murdered his wife and children. And there were, there were all of these weird accusations about, ritual sacrifice and stuff like that. So, so basically, then what happens is his wife goes missing. He sort of catches his wife and this guy together. The wife goes missing, and he doesn't know what the hell happened. In the morning, after he's determined his wife is missing, he wakes up in this weird bathroom by this canal that they always walk by. He walks by it with his son in the morning to take the boy to school. There's this creepy bathroom that, at one point the boy on the way to school says, "My friend saw a ghost in there," and he was like, "Whatever," no, he didn't.
It's a public toilet, yeah.
It's a public toilet. And so, anyway, the morning that his wife is missing, he had passed out the night before, woken up in this weird public toilet, and sort of walked home. He realized that his wife wasn't home, and he was sort of like just haunted by not knowing what was going on. He had blacked out. He was just confused, and he kind of didn't know what to do. And then from that point onward, he's just kind of, this whole time, you're purely inside his head. So you don't know either what's going on. I mean, you have a pretty good idea, but the guy is so likable, and you just, every time it veers into like, did he do this? Did he not do this? What's happening? What kind of guy is this? He seems really kind. So, and he's clearly losing it, and we're right there with him. So I would say, did I forget anything in that synopsis?
Well, I think the only thing is that you may need to touch on is that while he was in that public restroom, he sees kind of a ghostly figure that whispers in his ear and is looking over the stall and is trying to get in the stall. He sees a pair of shoes. He looks out on the canal, and as he's in his, he's disturbed by what he saw his wife doing. He's throwing up from it. He goes out and he sees what looks like this creepy guy that was kind of being a voyeur while he was throwing up in the bathroom. Looks like bless you. It looks like he's attacking his wife, although he can't be certain of what he thinks he's seeing. Yeah. And so he feels like he had been spied upon in the bathroom, and he feels like potentially this guy that spied upon him did something to his wife. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I think anything beyond this is probably going to be spoilery.
Me too. So should we give our overarching kind of review at this point?
Oh, how we felt about it, and then go into spoilers?
Yeah, so we've got, so this way, like, people know what it's about, and then we can thumbs up or thumbs down it.
Sure.
And then we can get into spoilers. That sound right? Okay. So I would say I actually really liked this film, but this is my favorite kind of horror, is psychological horror, and I love that there's this unreliable narrator in it. I found it sufficiently creepy. I think that it earned its scares. I don't think that it was out for shock. I think that it was out for dread, and I think it worked really well in that way. So that's my 2-minute kind of synopsis of what I thought of it.
Well, this is a historical moment because it's the first time we disagree. I didn't like this movie a bit.
Wow. Okay. Do you want to wait to get into why, or do you want to start to kind of gesture?
I think I can wait to get into why. Because it might get into spoiler territory. Why? Okay. But I did not find this. I found this movie to be predictable. I found it to be predictable and not scary, and I found the main character, I did not find him to be not relatable, but I didn't find him to be sympathetic enough for me to care about him.
I get it. And you know what? I think, like, I would say that I can understand those criticisms for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah. For me, I agree with you. I think that this was nothing new. This was there were a lot of reused, like, excellent director kind of not trick the scenes that were kind of recreated. Um, and for me, I think I can definitely see that. Um, for me, I think what saved it, in my mind, at my
Mm-hmm.
what I was thinking, is that I loved the dread of it, and
Yeah.
I loved the sort of the visuals and the surrounding enough that it kind of won that over, won
Yep.
me over.
I can see how the psychological aspect of it would appeal to you.
Mhm,
Yeah, I
mhm.
can see that.
So should we
Yeah,
now
we are
mark
at
it?
yeah, we're at 11:45, so I will mark it, and now we will get into spoilers. And okay, so that ends the spoiler-free part of our review,
Mhm, mhm.
and we will
Let's
now
dig in.
what's that?
I said, now let's dig in.
Now let's dig into this thing. And
Should I start with a couple things that I liked, just kind of
oh,
key
sure.
things from the game? Okay. So, a couple of the things that I really liked were the sense that, and I'm such a sucker for this because I love, like, David Lynch, and I think Fritz Lang and stuff like that. They really make this kind of bleak atmosphere that kind of is inside someone's head, and you don't really know,
Mm,
is it really like this? Is it just this way this person is feeling that's coloring all of this? It has this kind of nightmare fever dream feeling to it that is just appeals to my taste buds.
yeah.
So that's just kind of something that I always have liked, and that's what this did, I think, pretty well. There were some things that, like, I'm trying to think. Oh, with him and the wife in the middle of the night, near the beginning, there's a text that comes. It's
Yeah.
it's the middle of the night. He said, "Who is that?" And then at that point, the little boy comes in like, "Daddy, I'm scared. Can you take me to bed?" And you can see this weird sort of sadness that she has, where she's trying to distance from him a little bit. And then at that night they have sex, and you can tell it's sort of like him trying to claim her in a way.
From
That
that
whole
text, yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing with her kind of looking at him and saying, "I love you," in this weird way where it's almost like it's the last time she's gonna see him. Um, to me, just struck me as it really fed that kind of like sad, bleak place where you're dreaming something and you're like, I know my partner's cheating on me. And I
Yeah.
feel like everyone's had this, and I know my partner's cheating on me, and I can feel it, and I'm going crazy. Am I seeing things? Is this happening? Is this not happening? And it kind of drives you to this weird brink. And then you wake up, and even then you're like, look at them, like, you son of a bitch,
Yeah.
what did you? So it was, when it's that real and that palatable, I thought that the acting between the main character, the husband and the wife, was so good that I immediately was flung into this kind of messed up nightmare of the world.
Mhm.
So that's kind of so that's one thing that I really liked, right from the beginning. But yeah, yeah. So I that's just one little thing I wanted to mention. Um, and I liked that his job was an archivist, but I can see how that's a little bit like, come on already, like, so his job is to watch films, um and he and that's how he happens upon this film, and his work is clearly seeping into his life, and his life is seeping into his work, and it just starts to get really intermingled and screwed up. um,
Mm.
I
Mhm.
think a big thing was that probably was the big differentiator between liking this and not, was that I felt for the guy. I did, even though I was convinced that he had murdered his wife or probably had. I looked at him and I was like, no, he's so delicate, and I can, maybe he didn't do it. And maybe, it was all of these weird excuses where it's like this really a person who you would be convinced was really kind and like a good guy actually did this. It was very uncomfortable to believe, and so I didn't want to. And so I definitely like felt that kind of protective feeling over him. But anyway, but I could see that if you don't identify with the character, that you wouldn't like the movie very much.
No, I didn't identify with the character at all. There was no doubt in my mind that he was the killer of
Mhm.
everybody in everything, and that he was there was no that he was um I, now I don't know if he was creating these scenarios in his head to make himself feel better about what he had committed. I don't know um, if there was a ghostly presence that was egging him on and filling in the gaps in his memory.
Mhm.
But to me, I was not surprised at all that he was the one that killed his wife and then killed his boss. The one thing that did surprise me was the very, very ending with the little boy. Um, that surprised me. Um,
Mhm.
with the parents talking out of the wallboard,
Mhm.
talking to the
They
little
were
kid,
asking
saying,
them why.
Do you want us to join us?" And the kid jumps out of the car. That I have to say was a legitimate surprise. But I didn't. There was to me there were since I didn't feel any connection to the guy, and I
Mhm.
felt like he was definitely responsible for anything. I didn't feel any real jump scares. Nothing
Mm-mm.
scared me. Even though he kept seeing all these visions and stuff, I felt like his mind was creating them to make up for the fact that he was a killer, and he was m- making these things up in his head to try and create a world where the ghosts were responsible or something.
Mhm.
I'm having a hard time
No,
articulating it,
no,
but
I think you're right on. I think
oh,
you're right
okay.
on. Yes. And
Okay.
I think you're absolutely right. And for me, the thing that I this made me think of was, if something it's sort of like there are such weird situations that you make a snap decision, and you feel sort of maybe possessed by it. I really don't think I would ever lose my faculties so much that I would, hide and murder my husband,
No.
much to his relief, I bet. But um, I can see in little ways how we do things like this without realizing it.
Right.
Um, we tell ourselves things to make ourselves feel better. And I don't even know if this is even remotely related, but um, so I live in a city and in Chicago, and there are people around here who will like beg for money. And I've heard so many people say, as we walk past them, like, well, I don't want, like they throw up these defenses and instantaneously like make up a backstory for this person where
Yeah.
they somehow don't deserve this money or something. And I find that so weird because I noticed that I had done that too, because it's an uncomfortable place to be where you're like, I'm actually making a choice that affects somebody, and I don't like that. I want to make up this alternate reality
Mm.
where it's somehow that person's fault and I'm right. Um,
Okay.
and so I when I look at it through that lens, to me, it becomes really interesting because this movie is a very extreme version of that. But
Hmm.
for me, there are definitely things that I do all the time that if I stop and think about it, it's like, that's really not okay. But I've created a narrative for myself in this situation so I can kind of deny things enough where I can feel better. I'm still a good person. I've, I haven't done anything. I haven't, and so I think that just by, look, again, I mean, I think that certainly this was something that was taken to the absolute extreme, but I glommed onto that piece of it, and I living in this guy's head for for me living in this guy's head for like an hour and a half was sincerely creepy
Mm.
and scary, and it did in some ways hold up a mirror like, you know what, man, you do this too. you know
Uh-huh.
so I found that interesting. Now, the there were some scenes like when you know the woman, his boss, when she came over to him in the middle of the night to watch some footage of, she went over there to like watch footage that he had taken that they were processing at the office, and she brought it over to him in the middle of the night, like, it's finally done. And he says, come upstairs with me and watch it. And the figure, there's like a figure that appears in the film and reaches it, comes in through the wall and kind of like grabs the boss and drags her into the hole in the house, in the wall. And that looked really cool, but it's also like very, very similar to The Ring, which did that, and to Ringu, which did that, and it was kind of like this amazing visual. So it was like, well,
But it also didn't happen.
but it also didn't happen. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But and I think the reason, now see, I may be coming at it differently than other men because I have virtually no male ego. I was a Mr. Mom, so
Yeah.
I raised my daughter,
Mhm.
um, the whole time she was growing up. Um, uh, Anytime I was in a bar and there was like a bar fight and somebody challenged me to a bar fight, I'm like, okay, dude, yeah, right. You can kick my ass. That's fine. I'm leaving now. Yes, you're tougher than I am, right? Yes, I am totally a girly man. Okay, yeah, you're right. And I would just walk out. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not getting into a fight with you. I don't care enough. I'm just not into it. And
Mhm,
so
mhm.
I mean, I don't care about those things. And so to me, I, if I found my spouse was cheating with somebody, I'd be like, well, I guess this relationship's over. I'm not going to choke her and kill her and drown her in the canal. I mean, I would just be like, well, it's time to start over with somebody else. I mean, I'm not going to kill her over it. I I can't tell you how many times I'm reading the paper or we're watching TV and a scenario like that happens where somebody kills his philandering spouse, and I'll just look at my wife and I'll go, whatever happened to divorce?
I know.
Why you got to kill somebody over this? Why
Yeah,
not just divorce them? I mean, now you're going to go to jail, and you there goes your life. How stupid is that? And so I realize, of course, we don't have a movie if the guy just files for charges for divorce and stuff. And
right.
so I understand that, but but to me, I just I didn't relate to the guy because um at the very end we see all these things happen that show that he's actually the perpetrator of all these things, and he's just I just could not um I just could not relate to any of the issues he was having because I just am not that kind of guy, and it wasn't set up. Maybe it could have been set up differently by a different director where it could have been scarier to me.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Maybe with better jump scares, maybe with m- more more visuals of the past deaths that happened in the house.
Hmm.
Um, I thought the ending where he was dragged under by I guess his wife and the little kid was let go. I thought that was good.
Hmm.
That was appropriate and good. I thought that was a good ending. And then the shocking ending where they talked the little boy into jumping out of the car. That was really good, and not in the sense that I was glad to see the little kid
No,
do
sure.
that, of course, but the fact that it was such a surprise and a jolt, and
Hmm.
it was the first surprise of the movie to me. Everything else
Yeah,
was very predictable to me. Um, and so that was the first genuine surprise of the movie to me, the last 5 seconds.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I hear you. It's definitely not a film that will scare you. To me, I like, I'm partial to the slow burns. Like, I
Yeah.
love movies that will have genuine jump scares and will make me like, like kind of freak out, but a lot of times the ones that really stick with me are the ones that are the slow burns where there is this feeling of, am I going crazy? Because I think that there are definitely times in all of our lives where we're like, am I the only one seeing this kind of thing? And that, like, so for me, this movie really kind of played on atmosphere, this deep fear of being alone or of having
Hmm.
done something or
Hmm.
guarding a secret by yourself. Um, I think like those are the things that scared me in a broader, like, I don't existential sense.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like, oh my God, am I like, there are some times when you're like, I think, where we all think about stuff and we're like, um, wow, the only perception I really have at all is my own,
Hmm.
and how do I know it's real or right? Or, I mean, like when you stop and think about it, there's a whole lot that can screw with your head. So for me, um, I was sort of, I think I was more able to kind of relax into just being like, okay, dude, just take me on a ride in your head. Like all
Yeah.
right, I'll give myself up to you. I think it's interesting that what you mentioned about these guys who do these things, who are sort of tough guys or who make these kinds of bad choices. And I could be wrong, but I kind of pick up a sense of like like visceral like hatred or something. Like, I'm definitely not like that. Those guys are bad. I'm staying over here. Like, I wonder if that emotional, like, kind of like, no, I know these kinds of guys. I'm not that kind of guy.
Are you
If that
picking
brought
that
my
up from
guard up
me?
against this guy. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm wondering, I mean, I'm wondering if that's true. Do you think that, like, you kind of having this, like, do you think you might have been more angry at the character than
Oh,
you really actively did not identify with him because he's one of these assholes who you know?
he came off to me as more insecure than anything else.
Yeah, I think I could see
He
that.
suffered from some deep insecurity as opposed to some macho kind of some kind of macho overload.
Mhm.
Um, so I just I don't that's interesting. That's a very interesting question as to whether I was angry at him or not. I think that um, I I think that I always I always wonder why somebody would choose to kill somebody else instead of trying to find another way out of a situation that leaves the other person alive. Y-
Yeah,
You know, things like road rage um,
yeah,
really puzzle me. Like,
yeah,
you know, to the point where you get so angry you end up killing somebody because they cut you off in traffic. I'm like, really?
yeah,
You really want to kill somebody because they cut you off in traffic, and now you're chasing them down the parkway 95 miles an hour, and you got a gun in your car and blah 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 whatever. And so when it comes to somebody cheating on you, I I don't know if I'm angry at that person or I'm just kind of bewildered. Um, maybe maybe I'm angry at him. That's a good question.
and I wonder because just in listening to you talk about, you know, some of these kind, you know, like I'm not like that. I was a dad who I was never insecure about being a family man and being the guy who was more sort of rational than these people who make these snap decisions. You know, he was one of those people. And I was just wondering if that's why you were more reluctant to get inside of his head. And I don't mean to be like, I'm not psychoanalyzing. I am psychoanalyzing you and I'll stop. I didn't
No,
mean to. But it's
I think it's
interesting.
fair. It's fair, Jen, for you to do that. I'm for I I'm not upset that you are doing that. I think it's part of it makes it interesting
Yeah,
to
yeah.
see what my I don't know what the word is, to see what my mindset is going into a movie where we disagree.
Mhm.
And I want to make sure you understand that just because we disagree, I don't think your viewpoint is any less.
Oh, same.
Yeah, I mean your viewpoint is just as important and as mine, and people who are watching this um, need to understand that just because we disagree doesn't mean we don't respect each other's opinion just as much as we always do. I mean, you're
Totally.
totally entitled to your opinion, and the movie worked for you, and so it's important for people to understand why it worked for you.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I don't mind you analyzing why I thought this.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's a legit question why I thought it. But I didn't really feel angry towards him as I felt disconnected towards him.
That is a huge difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a huge difference. Yeah, and I mean, it's also, and just even psychoanalyzing myself in that same way that you just did, I kind of, maybe I, it's like, why the hell did I identify with a murderer is probably an even better question than why someone didn't. But I guess I saw this guy as also deeply flawed and vulnerable and insecure, and someone who, in my mind, I would not expect to do something like this. And so that makes me think, like, I don't expect myself to do something like this. How would that go down if I did? So it's interesting just to kind of think about that, whether or not you relate to um, um, the monster in the movie or not.
Yeah.
And that's not a new thing. I mean, it's certainly not something that this movie invented in any way.
Right.
And I think that it is definitely I think it is a very taste driven movie because, like you said, you have to be, if you're okay with kind of knowing the ending, or whatever, knowing what's going on the whole time, you have to sort of like be okay with that in order to like it. If you really like someone who's like, I gotta have a plot that's got twists and turns and surprises, probably you're not gonna like this one, is what I would say. If you're okay with sitting back and getting into the hot bath of a movie,
Yeah.
letting it go, and you're okay with that, which a lot of people aren't. Like, aside from this being probably too scary for my husband, this is probably one he could watch, but I think he is like you, and he would be like, I already know all this crap. I'm done. I don't want to watch it. So
Yeah, maybe it's the structure of the movie too that I wasn't happy with.
yeah,
Like you're saying.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And where yeah, like, and it's like one of those things where it's one of those things where it's like, you ask if something is, if a piece of art or a movie or a whatever is good or bad, is different from saying I liked it or I didn't like it. And
Right.
this one I gave a big break because I like it. I like
Yeah.
that kind of horror a lot. But I think if someone said, is this an excellent horror film? I'd be like, it's okay. Did I
Yeah.
really like it? Yeah, I did really like it, but that's just because of the way that my, whatever that's what I like. But yeah, so it's interesting. I like us having the differing viewpoints.
Yeah. And I liked your analyzing me. I think it was interesting.
He
I thought it
irritates
was
me when I do
interesting
that to
because
him.
you were trying to get at the root of why I didn't enjoy the movie. So I
Yeah,
thought that
yeah,
was a
I think that
legitimate
has a lot
question.
yeah, yeah. I think it has a lot to do with it, because I think ultimately it's like, we look at that stuff and we're like, is this believable or not? Or does this hit on a kind of latent fear that I have or not? It can get incredibly personal.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's pretty cool. Interesting.
Yeah. So, well, I found this discussion to be way more interesting than the movie, quite frankly.
I love it. Well, good. We got something. You got something out of it.
We did. I did. I got a
Yeah.
lot out of it. It was a lot more fun talking about the movie with you than the movie itself.
Oh, good to know. Yeah. So I guess for this one, it is something that if you want something that is, you know, if you don't identify with this character right away, I think that, like Jess, you're not gonna love it. I think the same thing is if you really like something that is sort of more surprising and shocking, you're not gonna find that here either. If you start watching it and you're sort of like the guy, or you feel like you can kind of relate to him, then it's very possible that you'll like the movie. And if you're okay with very slow burning, less shock, but more just dread and nightmare atmosphere kind of thing, and the possibility of losing your mind, then I think you might like it.
Yeah, I think that sums it up really well. Yeah. Okay. Well, good.
Cool.
Very good. I think this was another excellent episode of A Walk in the Woods at Midnight.
If we do say so ourselves.
Yes. Well, if we don't say it, who's going to say it?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Although we do get a lot of compliments in the comments.
I know. Thank you for doing that, guys. We love you, and we really appreciate that. You know, if sometimes that we might introduce you to new movies, and you guys introduce us to new movies, and that's really at the core of what this is all about. Is like relating to one another on the, you know. And I think I really love horror because it speaks to so many of us in such different ways and such a deep level. It's a really fun way to kind of relate to other people. So
Yeah. So please leave a comment, and we always respond to comments. Please feel free to subscribe, hit the like button, and as usual, we end it with peace and love. Peace and love. Thank you for tuning in.